In Chapter 9 of A People's History, we see how slavery was so strong in the United States, and it was so strong because slaves were so practical to have. They made it easier to get work done. We see in year 1790, with 500,000 slaves, 1,000 tons of cotton were being produced in the South. But then less than 100 years later, in year 1860, we had 4 million slaves producing 1 million tons of cotton. So slaves made things easier to get stuff done. They were practical and they were needed to do the labor and all the harder work. And rebellion was a major fear among the slaveholders just because there were so many more slaves than there were people in charge. So religion was used as a form of control, as a form of a way to keep the slaves hopefully from rebelling, because it was said if you give them an hour to devote to God on the Sabbath and for religious reasons, then they'll be in a better state of mind, and there was a less chance of them rebelling against the slaveholders. And then the people pushing for abolition, it was both blacks and whites. So the black abolitionists, they were the backbone of the anti-slavery movement. They were the more violent ones with more open actions, and they used weapons, they were armed, and they used voting. They used the ballot box and Constitution. While white abolitionists were more lectured. They did more lectures, they used the newspapers, and then they ran the Underground Railroad to get the slaves to freedom. And Reconstruction was kind of a failure just because once the slaves were set free from the 13th Amendment, they still needed work, and since they were so poor, they still had to go back to the whites and get work where they weren't paid very much, and they were still very poor. And it didn't help that terrorist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan was running around, making things difficult. So it was hard for slaves to get more freedom when there were people protesting all around. And post-war literature, it insulted the blacks. It called them animals. It compared them to animals. So they weren't being treated as humans. They weren't being described as real people. And then the legal system was unfair. The jail system. Whites would get off free, but the blacks would go to jail and it was really unfair. So that didn't help Reconstruction, trying to get the blacks into society with equal rights.